Hello everybody, welcome back. My name is Nick and I'm going to show you how to work with the main assembly we just created and and make the shell around it. So first thing first, as always, make sure your testbot project file or whatever your project file is called, make sure it's selected. Let's go ahead and open our assembly. Let's configure our environment to be how we want it to be and let's get to work. So the way I plan on doing this is, since everything is laid out and rigid, what we can do now is just build around it, build our shell around it, without having to um, find dimensions and transfer things from this assembly to a part. What we're going to do instead is just create a new component in here, and just like you're creating another part, any other part, we're gonna name it. Let's call it the shell. It automatically saves to our workspace. Let's hit OK. And now we have to select a plane that will be the one of the origin planes of the new part. Because I know that this new part is going to be touching the bottom of the battery, I'm going to select the bottom of the battery as the start plane. So now if we look at our origin, we have our three planes right at the bottom of the battery centered around the battery's origin, actually. So let's create the part. Let's start a sketch and the bottom face, and we should project our geometry. If you recall from the first video, we're going to project it as construction lines so we don't have any problems with solid lines interacting with our own solid lines and creating some issues. So what I'm going to do here is just project kind of the outline of all the electronics of our robot, so that way we can build our bot around the outline. Okay, so now if you remember our drawing from the previous video, and we kind of drew out a rough outline of our walls, we're going to, if you can follow my cursor, we're going to draw it in a path like this, okay? We're not going to worry about the wall that that the motor mounts to. That's going to be the next step. So let's just do a single outline of where we want our walls to be. Again, making sure that when you place a line, it doesn't automatically constrain it as something we don't want it to constrain. So now let's add a couple of constraints. So for example, this is going to be horizontal. These, well, actually, yeah, and that's the only constraint we can really add. The rest are dimensions and constraints based off of our parts here. So I know I want there to be a 1/16 inch of clearance between the wheel and the outside, or the wall. So I'm going to do that. And the same on the other side. And actually, instead of typing a 1/16 again, what I can do is just come over here and select this dimension, and it's going to make it the same value as the dimension I just selected. See how that works? So now if I were to change this dimension to, I don't know, a quarter instead, the other one is automatically changed since it's the same as this dimension. So let's put this back to a 1/16. So now I'm going to dimension the front, and I want an 1/8 inch of clearance between the front wall and the wheel. And instead and be careful what you select. So if you look at my cursor, just right below it, there's an icon of the type of dimension it's going to be. So if I were to select here, it would dimension it to the center point of the arc, but I want it to be to the edge of the arc. So I'm going to try to get it right in the middle, and you see that dimension that's being created, and that's exactly what I want. So I'm going to make that 1/8 of an inch. And I don't need to do it on the other side. I just need to make these collinear. Perfect. And what we're creating here is the interior of the wall. Remember that the walls have thickness, and there's going to be an exterior of the wall too. And if you recall, we wanted an 1/8 an inch between the interior of the wall and the drive motor. So I have to make that 1/8. Let's do the same for the other side. And last but not least, you may remember we wanted an 1/8 an inch between the electronics and the wall. And in the back, oh, I don't know, let's just make it a 1/16. So everything's blue. That's the outline of our base. And what we can do is then offset it, because we're going to have the thickness of our wall be 1/8 inch. Now we're just making the base and we're not actually making the walls right now, but just so we understand better about what the robot is going to look like and what the geometries are going to be, I decided to do it this way. So let's finish the sketch and let's extrude it and have our base plate. Be sure to select the outer rim as well. And let's extrude it 1/8 inch, we said. Perfect. So now what's next is to add cutouts for our wheels. See how it's going right through our base plate here? We don't want that. We want it to have a cutout. So what we're going to do is create a new sketch on the base plate we just created. Let's project our geometry of the wheels. And let's go ahead and make a rectangular solid line cutout shape for our wheels. And I want this to be a 1/16 inch or 1/8 inch here, 1/8 inch on the other side, 1/8 inch up top. Or actually, I'm going to make this a 1/16 of an inch, and the same below. So one is blue, one is not. What we can do is put a couple constraints on here. And now I should just have to do one dimension, which I want it to be the same as the dimension on the other side. Hit OK, and everything's blue now. So let's finish the sketch, and let's cut it out using the extrusion command. So select the two profiles, make sure you select cut, and I'm just going to put through all, press OK, and now we have our wheel cutouts. So the next step, I would say, is to add the outer wall, right? So if you remember our bot drawing, or the bot I showed you at the beginning, we had something that kind of looked like this, right? And it was curved through the entire thing, so it kind of looked like that a little bit, I guess. And hopefully you can kind of see what we're going to do. And the way we're going to achieve this effect is we're going to sweep, use the sweep command. So if you hover over it and kind of see what it does, you make a sketch of a face and you have a path, and that sketch is swept along that path and a solid body is created. So to do that, we need to first make a sketch of the profile that we want to sweep. So I'm just going to choose an edge that the profile will be along. So I want it to be kind of curved, right? So I'm going to make an arc. I'm going to put an arc on the outside too. You know, and if you, this is just, I want it curved, right? If you wanted it to be kind of an angled shape, what you could do is a shape kind of like this, and you could sweep this path along. Well, you have to close the path, right? You have to close the profile, so you need to put a line here and a line here and dimension it, of course. But that's how you do an sloped sides. But I'm going to do curved sides instead. But it's kind of the same concept. So let's draw a curved profile. So let's add some constraints for it. I want the thickness of it to be 1/8 of an inch. And I want the top of it to be, let's make it 1/8 of an inch above the, or 1/16 of an inch above the battery. Okay. Well, let's make it 1/8, because why not? So there's still some green parts, so let's add a couple more constraints. Excellent. So it's all blue. Now we can go ahead and sweep this profile. Let's finish the sketch, and let's hit the sweep command. It automatically selected the profile since it's the only one that's not used in an extrusion or a feature already. So the profile is selected, we just have to select the path. And I want it to go along the entire outer edge. I can even select these paths here. Excellent. So now our curved walls are created. What we're missing still, though, are some interior walls. So If you don't have walls where my cursor kind of is on this interior walls here, the wires that are and electronics that are on the inside have a high chance of falling into the weapon, which is going to be spinning very fast, and there's going to be some wind, and so there's going to be some suction, and you just want to have walls on the inside here. So I'm going to go ahead and create those walls by putting a SketchUp and just kind of outlining or following these lines here, but with a thickness towards the inside to make it an actual wall. So let's project this geometry. And let's make solid lines that is going to be our profile. Okay. So we have our entire profile here. It's just not constrained. So let's go ahead and put some dimensions here. And I want it to be a uniform thickness on the outside, so I can just select this dimension and it'll be the same value for the side dimensions here. And everything is blue. So let's go ahead and finish that sketch and extrude it. And so instead of a distance, I'm just going to use the to command here. And so it will project or extrude till it gets to a face that I select. So I want it to go till it hits the top edge. And look how beautiful that is. Okay. So there's one more wall that's missing, and that is the wall that this motor is going to mount to. So we need to go ahead and create that. So let's start a sketch, and we can see that the motor is flush with that face. So I'm going to make a sketch on that face. Now it's kind of hard to see on the inside, so what we're going to do is slice our graphics. So let's go to View, Slice Graphics, and that cuts away everything within our view so we can get a nice image of the actual surface that we want to sketch on. So I want to project the geometry of the bottom of the weapon motor there, and I actually want to make this all construction lines so I don't have to worry about profiles being wrong or whatnot. And now I kind of just want a rough shape. So I'm going to project the bottom geometry here so I can constrain it, and I'm going to, and let's add some constraints. Okay, our profile is blue. And I'm going to do one more thing and add cutouts for the holes. And then I could just actually just select these holes and make them solid lines instead of creating solid lines over them. And I'm going to create another hole here. That's, oh, I don't know, a 1/4 inch, just so, or let's make it a 1/2 inch. A 3/8 of an inch. So there'll be some clearance for our shaft to move, which protrudes out the bottom of it. So let's go ahead and extrude this profile. But see how it's going the wrong way? We want it to go the other way. And we want it to add material, not cut away material. And there we go. So there are some problems here. Like you can see here, that's a problem. And if we were to put a bolt here, the head wouldn't actually be able to be tightened in because it would hit the side wall here. So what I want to do is I want to just cut away a little bit of material, and I'm going to do that just by making a sketch and extruding it along. So I'm going to slice my graphics again, and I'm going to project the geometry of this hole. And I'm going to give it some clearance around the outside. So let's just make it a 1/2 inch, something like that. Finish it, extrude it. I really don't care how much, so I'm just going to use an arrow and come out, I don't know, a little less than 1/2 inch. Okay, so now that's some clearance for our bolt to go. And so the last thing to do is to cut out, let's slice our graphics, cut out this little chunk of material. So I'm just going to project this geometry and create a circle, a solid circle that is the same size. Finish that up, extrude it, cut it to this face here. And there we go, that little chunk is removed. Couple of extra things that we need to account for is the wires that come out of the weapon motor. So you remember this little protrusion here, that's where the wires come out of. Now we need a way to get those wires on the inside of the robot. And what I'm going to do is just put a little hole kind of right here, so the wires can get on the inside. So let's create a sketch. Let's slice our graphics. And our wires come out here. So we're just going to make a little cutout. Oh, I don't know, something like that. Doesn't have to be precise. Finish the sketch. Let's extrude that, cut it to this face. Okay. And I don't like how there's this little overhang here, so what I'm going to do is edit the sketch that we just created and just make it come up a little more. Finish that. Now it is a little blocky, so what I'm going to do is put fillet in. So I'm going to round the corners. One there, one there, one there, one there. It just makes them nice and smooth. Let's hit OK. And the next thing we need to do is add some mounts for this for the drive motors. So let's save our work. Let's go back and let's take a look at what we're going to do. So if we go to view, we can do what's called a section view, right? So if we select this face, it'll just cut that material so we can see on the inside, and we can just bring this out till it shows exactly what we want it to show. That's good there. So there's a motor here, and the plate where it's going to be mounted to is here. Notice how there's a big gap here. We need to fill that gap with material. Also, if we were to end this section view, we need a way to secure the motor to the base. Right now it's just floating, and the most common method actually is just zip ties. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 4 little holes like here, 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 and here for zip ties to just strap over the top. Okay, and I'm going to do that for both sides. So let's go ahead and edit the part again. So just double click on it. And a note is that, let's return. So note is that if you have this opened already and you try to double click on this, it'll pull you to the part itself. So you have to get out of this part and make sure it's not opened on your ribbon down here, and just double click and it'll open it in the assembly. So first step first is the blocks. So let's create a sketch on the bottom and let's project our geometry around the motor. Let's go ahead and add the block here. Excellent. So let's extrude that out. And maybe we can use the 2 command here and go to the bottom face of that drive motor. Perfect. And because they're at the same height, it works out for the other one as well. So let's add the holes now. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to slice my graphics, and I'm just going to add 8 holes and just manually dimension them or constrain them. We know they all want to be the same size, so we're going to make them all equal. And now we only have to dimension one of them to be, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch or something like that. Okay, I want them to be tangent to the block. I want the ones that will have the same zip tie running through it to be in line with each other. So there's going to be a zip tie across those 2 holes, a zip tie across those 2 holes. And I know I want them to come in a certain amount. I'm not really picky on how much. I'm just going to say, I don't know, 0.2 inches. And from this side, I'm going to say 0.3 inches. Same for over here. Excellent, they're all blue. Let's go ahead and cut them. And to select all of them at once, I'm just going to do this. Cut all. Excellent, we have our holes. Those are the main steps of this piece. And I think we're done. One last thing is to remove the adaptivity, because remember, this just makes it a pain for us if we try to move things around. Yeah, move all this adaptivity, because it is a pain in the butt. Awesome. There is some interference here, so this intersects with our weapon motor intersects with our shell. So we're going to have to make a small cutout on our shell for the weapon motor. And I'm not going to be super precise about this. I'm literally just going to create a sketch. Let's go to the other side. Let's slice our graphics by either going to the button here, or you can just hit function F7, and that does the same thing. So let's project the outer geometry of our weapon motor. Hit OK. Extrude it. Let's cut it. And the shaft actually doesn't intersect. If we can get a good view, the shaft doesn't intersect with our shell, so we don't have to worry about that. We just have to worry about this stuff here. So I'm only going to extrude it. Oh, that's perfect, just about that much. So let's hit OK. Let's save it. Let's go back. Let's look at it. Perfect. There's no interference anymore. And if we were to make this a little bit better, you would add some material back into here just by adding a sketch and extruding it and adding material. But I'm not going to worry about that. You guys should, though.